My stepdaughters yelled, "You're not our blood. You have no voice." So I walked out, froze their cards, canceled the villa rental, and texted their dad, "Your turn to speak." Don't forget to subscribe and share your experiences below. Let's get started. My name is Mark. I'm 49. When I married Lisa, she came with 2 daughters, Chloe and Mia. I used to call them my girls. Never out loud, not at first. Just in the silence of my mind, where I still believed effort could overwrite blood. Their father was never far. Not physically, he lived in another state, but emotionally, he lived in our walls. He drifted in and out like a ghost in nice shoes. His name alone could shift a room. A single message from him could brighten them in ways I never managed. That man knew how to make scarcity look sacred. He'd appear for a weekend and be praised like a king, while I stayed behind fixing the life he kept abandoning. I knew it, Lisa knew it, and somewhere deep down, so did they. But none of that mattered. He was their dad. I was just the man who married their mother. I never tried to replace him. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't foolish. But I thought, naively maybe, that I could add something to their lives. Not compete. Just contribute. I came into that house with 2 hands and no illusions about love being instant. I figured love was something you built. A long game. Late-night drives when they got stranded. Help with math homework they didn't understand. A steady presence when their real dad bailed again. I thought if I just kept showing up, something would shift. I believed love could be earned. Maybe that's the most dangerous lie a man can tell himself. In the early years, I let a lot slide. Birthdays where he sent expensive gifts and I got asked to drive them to pick up their cake. School plays where they scanned the audience for him, always him, and barely noticed I'd taken the day off. Chloe cried once when he missed her performance, and I held her until she fell asleep on my shirt. She never thanked me, and I never asked her to. That's the thing about trying to be the good guy. You don't ask for much in return. You tell yourself the work is its own reward. But deep down, you keep a silent ledger. Not because you're petty, because you're human. I remember the first time Mia introduced me to someone. She must have been 12. "That's my mom's husband," she said. Not stepdad. Not even Mark. Just a legal technicality. My name was a piece of paperwork to her. Still, I kept showing up. I helped Chloe get into college. Drove 4 hours round trip to tour campuses while her father sent "proud of you" texts. When she moved into her first apartment, I was the one lifting boxes while he posted a throwback photo with a caption about time flying. I paid her security deposit. She never asked me to. That was Lisa, whispering late at night. She's nervous to ask, but she needs help. I said yes without hesitation. That was the role. Be the helper. The background man. I built bookshelves for that apartment. Paid for a used fridge when hers died mid-semester. Chloe never invited me over after that. I was good enough to fund the foundation, but not to visit the house. The pattern repeated. Mia needed braces. Covered them. Chloe's car broke down senior year. I fixed it. Prom dress? Graduation trip? Summer camp for Mia when she was 16? All me. Quiet money. Quiet help. Quiet sacrifice. Lisa would say, "Thank you, they'll understand one day." But the years passed. They didn't understand. They just expected. One Christmas, I spent weeks planning dinner, tree, gifts I knew they'd like. Thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the year I'd feel something back. I spent more than I should have. Worked overtime to make it happen. They unwrapped their gifts with polite smiles, then FaceTimed their dad, showing him everything like he'd sent it. He hadn't. I watched from the hallway. It was like I didn't exist. Lisa noticed, of course. She always did. She put her hand on my arm later that night and whispered, "They're just kids." But they weren't kids anymore. Chloe was 23. Mia 19. Old enough to know gratitude. Old enough to know better. One evening, I overheard Mia on the phone. I was in the hallway, fixing a drawer she'd broken the week before. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but once you hear your name, it's impossible not to listen. She laughed and said, "He's just scared to be alone. That's why he sticks around." I stopped breathing. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. I did stick around. Despite the years of distance. Despite Lisa's refusal to correct them. Despite the absence of affection, I stayed. I told myself I was building a family. But maybe Mia saw clearer than I did. Maybe all I was doing was delaying my own loneliness. That night, I sat in the garage for hours. No music. No bourbon. Just the weight of my own silence. I stared at the workbench I'd built for Mia's science project 4 years ago. She got an A. Her father got the credit. He'd shared her project on Facebook, said how proud he was. And I hadn't said a word. Not to her. Not to him. Not to Lisa. That was my mistake. Silence isn't virtue. Sometimes it's surrender. I kept thinking about that call. About what Mia said. I kept hearing her voice, light and amused, dissecting my devotion like it was pathetic. Like I was some aging fool clinging to relevance in a house that didn't want him. That's when I realized something brutal. I had no place in this family. Not really. I was a function, not a father. An ATM with a smile. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. How Mia never said thank you when I paid her tuition. How Chloe stopped inviting me to events the moment her father reappeared. How Lisa never corrected their dismissiveness, only softened it after the fact. They didn't mean it. They're tired. They're going through a lot. But I was tired too. And no one excused me. I remember one night Lisa asked me why I hadn't come to bed. I was sitting on the couch, lights off, TV flickering quietly. I said I couldn't sleep. She kissed my forehead, whispered, "You worry too much," and went back upstairs. She didn't ask what was wrong. She didn't ask what I'd heard. Maybe she didn't want to know. That's when the first part of me started to withdraw. I didn't stop paying. Not yet. But I stopped hoping. I stopped dreaming of family vacations, of Christmases where we laughed, of holidays where I wasn't invisible. I stopped wondering if they'd ever come around. I stopped believing in us. Lisa still talked about our girls. She still made plans. But they were always through her, never with me. She handled the group chats. She coordinated visits. She played the middle. I was just the man who showed up on time, paid early, and stayed out of the way. I don't know when I became a ghost in my own home. Maybe I always was. But that moment, Mia's laugh, that line about me being afraid to be alone, it tore the veil. Not in rage. Not in tears. But in cold, unflinching clarity. I was living in a house where my name meant nothing. Where my sacrifices were background noise. Where love, if it existed, was conditional, quiet, passive, and stingy. I realized then that I wasn't afraid to be alone. I was already alone. And all I'd done was pay for the privilege. It started like all things do in families like ours, with a suggestion wrapped in an assumption. Chloe was getting married. Not a surprise. She'd been with him for a while. Some man named Eric, who smiled like a politician and shook my hand like it was a formality. Chloe introduced me as Mark. Never my stepfather. Just Mark. Like I was a cousin or a colleague. Like I was lucky to be included. Still, I nodded, shook his hand, and said congratulations. That's what you do. You play your part. I wasn't asked to give a speech. I wasn't asked to walk her down the aisle. That spot had been reserved long ago for a man who hadn't earned it, but who owned the title of dad the way some people own a deed to land they've never visited. Lisa was beaming, giddy even. "It'll be good," she said. "It'll bring everyone together." And that's when the bills started arriving. They didn't come in envelopes. Not right away. They came as phone calls, late-night wine-fueled brainstorming sessions with Lisa. "She's found a villa," Lisa said, showing me pictures on her phone. "It's in wine country. Look at that view. Nice. Expensive. She wants a private chef. Not stuffy, more rustic, intimate. Rustic chefs don't cost less. There's a decorator she follows on Instagram. He's available that weekend. Can you believe it?" Yes, I could believe it. I watched the numbers add up like water rising in a sinking room. Villa rental 5 figures. Catering thousands. Decor absurd. Music, drinks, transportation. All whispered in the language of dreams, never once tethered to reality. I didn't argue. Not because I agreed. Because I saw the trap. If I said no, I was the villain. The outsider. The cheap stepfather who didn't believe in family. If I said yes, I could cling to the illusion a little longer. Maybe earn a seat closer to the head table. Maybe hear her say thank you, for once. I chose the lie. Paid. Booked the villa. Signed the decorator's contract. Put down deposits for the band, the florist, the chef. It felt like lighting matches with $100 bills. But I told myself it was worth it. That maybe this event, this grand gesture would be the turning point. The moment Chloe saw me not just as Mark, the man who lingered in the background, but as someone who had built the stage she was about to shine on. The rehearsal dinner was at the villa. It was beautiful. Sunset spilling across the hills. Tables lit with candles. Music drifting through the vines. Everything Chloe wanted. Every detail approved by her and Lisa. I was there early, checking sound equipment, directing the chef's assistant where to set up. I wore a jacket I hadn't used in years. Tried to look like I belonged. Guests arrived. Family. Friends. People I didn't know but whose names I'd heard in passing for years. They all greeted Lisa with hugs. Chloe with admiration. Me? I got handshakes, nods. A few said nice place. As if I'd stumbled across it and offered it up like a raffle prize. No one asked how much it cost. No one asked who made it happen. I poured myself a glass of champagne and stood near the edge of the patio. Not in the spotlight. Not even in the crowd. Just nearby. The way I always was. Then it happened. I don't know what led to it. A joke? A toast? A casual remark? But Chloe turned toward me, smiling that brittle smile she uses when she wants to cut without drawing blood. She lifted her glass and said, in front of everyone, "You're not our blood. You don't get a say." Laughter. Soft, uncomfortable laughter. The kind people use when they don't know if something's cruel or just awkward. But it was enough. I stood there, holding my glass, and time slowed. Not because it was a surprise. God knows I'd heard worse in silence. But because she said it in public. Out loud. As a joke. A performance. Lisa looked down at her napkin. Didn't speak. Didn't reach for my hand. Didn't meet my eyes. And I knew in that moment I was done. Not with anger. Not with tears. Just done. The next morning I left early. Drove home alone. The roads were empty. My hands were steady. There was no music in the car. I didn't need it. My thoughts were loud enough. I opened my laptop. Passwords. Contracts. Bookings. Cards. I knew where everything lived. I had built this entire fantasy like a stage manager assembling a dream. Now I tore it down methodically. Cancelled the villa. Terminated the caterer. Contacted the decorator. Told him plans had changed. Refund policies. Service charges. Legal wording. I knew them all. I wrote the emails carefully. Detached. No emotion. Just business. Then I sent one final message. Short. Efficient. To Chloe and Mia's father. It's your turn to speak now. I didn't sign it. By noon, the text started. Lisa. Chloe. Mia. The volume increased hour by hour. From confusion to fury to threats. Accusations. Tears. You ruined everything. People are flying in. You're unbelievable. Lisa begged me to explain. Said I was being rash. That Chloe didn't mean it. That she was nervous. That it was just a joke. A bad one. I didn't answer. Because it wasn't a joke. It was a truth disguised as humor. And the room laughed with her. No one flinched. No one defended me. That was my line. I let them feel the weight of absence. Of everything I carried. Of everything I'd withdrawn. And when their father finally called, all bluster and concern, trying to play the diplomat, I let him talk. Let him rant. Let him say, how could you do this? And this affects our daughter? And do you understand what you've caused? Then I told him the facts. The villa, the catering, the decor, the band, all in my name. All my cards. My accounts. My money. I said, I stopped paying. It's your turn now. His silence was the first honest sound I'd heard in days. He muttered something about not being prepared. About needing time. I told him the same thing I once told myself. Maybe you should have thought about that before letting someone else carry your weight. By evening, Lisa came home. We didn't speak at first. She set her purse down, took off her shoes, sat on the edge of the couch like it was unfamiliar. Then she said, "You blindsided them." I didn't look up. "No," I said. They closed their eyes. She started to cry. Not loud, just soft, defeated weeping. The kind that comes when a woman realizes the man she relied on has finally seen through the performance. "They're young," she said. "They don't understand what they're saying." "They're not young," I replied. "They're grown. Old enough to make jokes. Old enough to know what those jokes cost." She wiped her eyes. "You didn't have to destroy everything." I turned to her, and for once, I said what I'd been afraid to say for years. "I didn't destroy it, Lisa. I stopped pretending it existed." I didn't argue. Not at the table. Not in the car. Not even when the texts turned from pleading to poisonous. I just left. Quietly. Without ceremony. I drove home alone while they screamed in group chats, debated damage control, tried to call back the moment like it was a spilled glass of wine. But you can't unspeak a truth. And Chloe's words, "You're not our blood. You don't get a say," were not a slip. They were a revelation. So I let them sit with it. No dramatic exit. No scene. Just silence. At home, I poured a glass of bourbon, opened my laptop, and began the work of undoing years of unearned grace. I blocked every card. Shut down every account tied to their names, Chloe's emergency credit line, Mia's tuition drafts, the automatic transfer for rent, the recurring payment for their phones, the vacation fund, the insurance. Gone. Every shared password canceled. Netflix, Spotify, even the meal kits Lisa ordered for us that I always paid for. All of it. Severed like nerves after a clean cut. Then came the bookings. The villa, canceled. Deposit non-refundable? Fine. It was worth the silence that would follow. The caterer terminated. The decorator informed. The band released. I made the calls with calm precision, like a man rescinding permission from a house that never treated him like he belonged. Each reply came with confusion first, then recognition. "Oh, you're the one paying?" "Yes. Always had been. Just not anymore." Then I sent the last message. Short, efficient. Not to Lisa, not to the girls, but to the man who'd been skating by on old titles and faded presents. Chloe and Mia's father. "Your turn to speak now." That was it. No signature. No threats. No emotion. He replied an hour later. "What's going on?" I didn't respond. Let him find out the way I did through omission. Let him feel what it's like when someone quietly stops holding up the world you take for granted. By morning, my phone was vibrating like a hive. Lisa. "Mark, what did you do?" Chloe. "You ruined everything." Mia. "This is beyond petty. You better fix this." Their father. "We need to talk. Seriously." Each message was a variation of panic disguised as anger. Not one of them started with, "Why?" Because they knew. They just didn't think the man in the background had it in him to disappear. But I did. And I made sure it echoed. Lisa came home that afternoon. I was sitting on the porch, watching the sky pull its gray blanket over the neighborhood. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, waiting for me to speak. I didn't. She stepped forward. "You've set off a firestorm." I nodded. "Then maybe they'll see what burns when the support beams leave." She crossed her arms. "They're devastated." I took a sip from my glass. "They're inconvenienced. There's a difference." She didn't answer right away. She was searching, I think, for the right words. Something between apology and justification. She failed to find either. "They didn't mean it," she said finally. "It was a joke." I turned to her slowly. "No, it was a mask. A truth dressed up for guests. A punchline built on contempt. And you didn't say a word." They were nervous. It was a big night. Big enough to humiliate the man who made it possible? She flinched. A small one. But I saw it. The first honest reaction since the villa. "They're young. They're adults. Silence. She sat across from me, hands knotted in her lap. You could have talked to me. I leaned back in the chair. For what? So you could smooth it over again? Call it a misunderstanding? Remind me that they don't see it that way? That's the problem, Lisa. They've never seen it. She looked at the porch floor. They didn't ask you to pay for everything. No, I said. They just accepted it. Every time. With silence. With entitlement. Like I owed them. Like my worth was measured by the credit limit I hadn't reached yet. I could see it in her face, the realization she'd held off for too long. I thought I was giving us a chance, I said. That maybe one day, one of them would see me not as the man who tagged along, but as the man who stayed. They know you stayed, she said quietly. I shook my head. They know I paid. Another silence. Then, what happens now? I looked at her, really looked, and saw the weight of years pressing down. Not just the panic of the moment, but the accumulation of every time she'd turned away, every excuse she'd made on their behalf, every quiet nod she'd given instead of defending me. I don't know, I said, but I won't keep paying for loyalty I never received. She stood to go inside. But before she stepped through the door, she said one last thing. You've changed. And I answered, without bitterness. No, I just stopped pretending I hadn't. The silence that followed was the beginning of a new era. By the next day, the fallout was in full bloom. The venue owner called Chloe to confirm final arrangements. When she learned the event had been canceled, she called Lisa in tears. Lisa called me and I didn't answer. The decorator posted a vague story on Instagram. Some clients are harder to please than others, followed by pictures of the floral arrangements he'd already begun. Mia commented a single crying emoji. Chloe texted me at 2 a.m. You humiliated us. Everyone is talking. I read it, then deleted it. The rehearsal dinner had been the performance. This was the review. And in that silence, the stunned quiet after the curtain falls, they began to see me not as the man who hovered quietly on the edges, but as the force they had taken for granted. The man who made things happen, and then unmade them. Mia's refund request came next. A polite message, phrased like a business memo. Can you please confirm the return of my spring tuition payment, since it's no longer being covered? No apology. No reference to what had been said. Just a request. Like I was a bank. I didn't reply. Then came the message from their father. He'd finally realized what I had left behind. The contracts are in your name, he said. They're asking me questions I can't answer. Can you forward me the details? I read it twice, then typed one sentence. Ask your daughters. They had a lot to say about who matters. I hit send, and in that moment, I felt something I hadn't in years. Freedom, not from responsibility. I never hated responsibility. It gave me purpose, but from being used, from being dismissed, from being the fallback plan that no one respected. That evening, I made dinner for myself. One plate, one glass, no family meal, no placeholders at the table. Just quiet, real quiet, not the sullen silence of resentment, but peace, earned, not gifted. Later, I walked the halls of the house, looked at the photos on the wall, Chloe's graduation, Mia's prom, Christmas 3 years ago when they both posed with me for the first time. Smiles like masks, moments staged like plays. I took them down, not in anger, just to make room for something honest. The next morning, Lisa found them stacked neatly on the counter. She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. In silence, a family can finally hear itself. And mine had nothing left to say. The morning after the silence settled, I woke to an empty bed. Lisa had slept in the guest room. I knew because the hallway light was still on, and her phone charger was missing from our nightstand. That kind of absence says more than words ever could. It's not distance. It's withdrawal. The quiet punishment of a woman who doesn't know where to put her loyalty. The house felt strange. Too open. The air carried a stillness that used to be impossible here. No perfume in the bathroom. No coffee brewing. Just me and the hum of the refrigerator. keeping time like a clock that refused to stop. Then the messages started again. Not from Lisa this time, but from the outside world. Friends of the family. People who had attended that rehearsal dinner. People who wanted my side. They all used the same phrase, "It's such a shame." Shame, as though I'd spilled wine on the carpet, not cut off years of exploitation. I didn't respond to any of them. They weren't looking for truth. They were looking for gossip. Around noon, Chloe's fiancé, Eric, called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. His voice was tight, the kind of polite fury men use when they've rehearsed their lines in front of the mirror. "Mark," he said, "I just wanted to say, you really blindsided everyone. You made Chloe cry." I waited, let the pause stretch. "That's new," I said. "Me making her cry. Usually that's her father's job." He didn't laugh. "You could have handled it differently." I leaned against the counter. "You mean quietly, like everything else I've handled for her?" He started to talk again, but I hung up before he could finish. There's no point arguing with a man who's still on his trial period. An hour later, Lisa came downstairs. She looked like she hadn't slept. Eyes red, hair tangled, the outline of a headache pressed between her brows. She stood by the kitchen table like a guest, her hands gripping the back of a chair. "I talked to Chloe," she said. She's devastated." "I'm sure she is," I said. "Losing luxury always hurts more than losing love." "Don't do that," she snapped. "Don't make it sound cruel. You humiliated her." I met her eyes. "No, Lisa." I stopped sponsoring her. She flinched. Then she sat, folded in on herself, and whispered, "You've turned cold." I poured coffee, took my time answering. Cold happens when warmth's been wasted for too long. She didn't reply, just stared at the table. That's when it hit me. She wasn't angry because I'd hurt her daughters. She was angry because I'd revealed the arrangement for what it was. Our marriage had been a negotiation between silence and gratitude, and now that the funding had dried up, so had the illusion. Later that day, a letter arrived. An envelope with Chloe's careful handwriting. No return address, but the perfume was unmistakable. I opened it at the kitchen counter. "You embarrassed us. You ruined the engagement. You made us look like fools in front of everyone. I don't know what kind of man does that, but it's not the one Mom married." That was all. No dad, no Mark, just condemnation written on scented paper. I folded it neatly and dropped it in the trash. Paper burns easier when it's dry. That evening I drove. No destination, just the open road, the hum of tires, the long stretch of quiet between one decision and the next. The sun was falling behind the hills, bleeding red into gray. I thought about the years, every payment, every gift, every favor disguised as help. I thought about how many times I'd chosen silence instead of confrontation. How many nights I'd told myself, they'll come around. They never did. When I got home, the house was darker than before. Lisa's suitcase stood by the door. Small one. Enough for a few days. She didn't look up when I walked in. "I'm staying with Chloe for a while," she said. "She needs me." I nodded. "Of course she does. She always does." She hesitated. "This doesn't have to be permanent." "It already is," I said. "You just haven't accepted it." She looked at me like she wanted to fight, but there was nothing left to fight for. She picked up the suitcase and left. No kiss, no goodbye, just the sound of the door closing, soft and final. The first night alone was strange. Freedom doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with echoes. Footsteps you still expect to hear, voices you keep listening for. I walked through the house, turning off lights that no longer needed to be on. Each room was a memory of labor. The repaired shelf, the painted walls, the photos I'd taken down but hadn't yet thrown away. Proof of effort without belonging. I poured another drink and sat by the window. Outside, the street was empty. Across the road, a neighbor's family gathered around a dinner table, laughter spilling through the open window. For a moment I envied them. Then I remembered envy requires illusion, and I'd run out of those. Days passed. The noise faded. Chloe's calls stopped. Mia unfollowed me online, the modern form of exile. Lisa sent one message. "We need to talk when things calm down." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to calm. I started sleeping again. Deep, uninterrupted sleep. No alarms. No waiting for footsteps or midnight arguments about bills. Just the rhythm of my own breathing. For the first time in years, the house felt like mine. A week later, a courier knocked. Another envelope, this one from the bank. I opened it expecting bills, but inside was a check. Refunds from the canceled bookings. Not much, but enough. Enough to feel like the world had finally returned something. I stood there, holding the check, realizing it wasn't about the money. It was the principle. The system had acknowledged the closure. The numbers balanced. The bill had come due and been paid. That night I cooked dinner for one. Steak, potatoes, a glass of red wine I didn't have to share. I sat at the table alone and didn't feel lonely. Just settled. The quiet was honest now. No performance. No pretending that laughter equaled love. Sometimes I still catch myself expecting a text. Lisa's apology, Mia's half-hearted message, Chloe's attempt at reconciliation, but none come. And maybe that's the truest ending of all. Not forgiveness. Not reunion. Just absence. The space where expectation used to live. I thought I'd miss them more. But what I miss isn't them. It's the version of myself that believed I could fix what was broken by throwing more of myself into it. That man is gone. He died quietly somewhere between the villa and the silence that followed. Now the days move differently. Slower. Cleaner. I work, I sleep, I walk. I see couples at grocery stores arguing over brands of coffee and wonder if they know how fragile it all is. How fast devotion turns to duty. How love can become debt when only one side keeps paying. Sometimes I drive past the villa, empty now, off-season. The gates closed, the vines overgrown. It looks abandoned, but not ruined. Just resting. I think about how easily beauty turns to burden when it belongs to the wrong people. Maybe families are like that too. I don't hate them. Not anymore. Hate takes energy, and I've given enough. I wish them well genuinely. I hope Chloe's wedding eventually happens. I hope Mia finds something she can believe in. I hope Lisa learns to tell the truth, even if it costs her comfort. But I also hope they remember this. Comfort is the first thing you lose when you mistake sacrifice for weakness. I still keep one photo, the last Christmas we spent together. It's on the bookshelf beside my desk. We're all smiling. Chloe in front, Mia beside her, Lisa leaning on my shoulder. I keep it not for love, but for clarity. A reminder that even false harmony can look perfect if you never ask who's paying for it. When I look at it now, I don't feel pain. I feel balance. Every gift given, every word swallowed, every insult ignored, accounted for. The math finally works. So here I am. Alone, yes, but not hollow. The quiet has shape now. Fits me. And sometimes, when the nights are too still and memory starts its slow parade, I pour another drink and ask the only question that still matters. The one that never really gets answered. Was I wrong? Was it cruel to cut them off? To let them feel the weight of what they took for granted? Or was it justice, the simple kind that doesn't need applause, only silence? You tell me, would you have stayed?